I purchased a book about Paris, Patrick Modiano's Young One, from a famous expat bookstore, Shakespeare and Company, to enhance the experience and understanding of Paris while I was there. I felt that in reading a historic and popular French author, that I would be able to see Paris through his lens, alongside mine, and it would enhance my understanding of the history of the streets that I walked and the sights that I saw. Not only did I benefit from the history found in my purchase of Young One, but I was deeply impacted by visiting the famous bookshop, Shakespeare and Company, where artists called tumbleweeds, and you can dig into my case study for more information on that, have lived and written for free since the 1950s. Inspired by the impact of my book and canvas booktote artifacts, I've created a custom book tour experience for you, much as you would find in a bookstore like Shakespeare and Company, with their knowledgeable staff. All of the books that I'm about to show you as recommendations either take place in France or were written by a French author. To start us off, I chose the book that I brought back from Paris with me, Young Ones by Patrick Modiano. And Modiano was the winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature and has many famous works, very popular in France. Lesser known in the United States, sadly. He is an incredibly talented author, and he often writes very moody 1950s or 1930s inspired books. In the Cafe of Lost Youth is another of his popular books, and I would highly recommend both of them. Next up, I have another famous French author, The Lover by Marguerite Duras. And Duras has written also just as extensively as Modiano. Her books, this was actually made into a movie a while back. Her books are slightly more what would be considered culturally scandalous than Modiano's books in a lot of ways, particularly because it was a female author writing these things. And this was first published in the 80s, so a little bit later than Modiano, and Duras has produced many works, including The Vice Consul, and most of her works are kind of shorter, so if you want to get a feel for that moody French literary kind of feeling, hers are perfect to pick up because you can read them in just one sitting in a weekend. So next up we have a classic, not a French author, but takes place in France, A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway, and my copy has a little bit of marking on it because I've used it for so many things. I'm sure if you've been in the American school system, you're familiar with Hemingway, but you've probably read some of his other works instead of this. This is him writing about being in Paris in the 1920s, and it's everything that you would hope that it would be. It talks about the food and the people and the romance and the atmosphere. So again, another great atmospheric book that I would highly recommend. James Baldwin, Another Country. This doesn't take place exclusively in France, but there are sections set in France, and Baldwin is such an important American writer, important for his critique of American culture and racism and homophobia. If you are looking to dive into something heavier and very intense, but noteworthy and important culturally, I would highly recommend this book. Nancy Mitford wrote Voltaire in Love, and this, if you're interested in history, this takes place in the French court at the height of their luxury. And it talks about Voltaire had a relationship with a marquise, and it's about their love story. And it's meaty and gossipy, but beautiful and excellent writing and great history, and just a really, really fantastic read to dig into. And this one is also like Modiano from the New York Review Books publisher, which is one of my favorites. So I recently read A Time to Keep Silence by Patrick Leigh Fermor, and he was an American. I would consider him an expat because he spent his latter years traveling the world and didn't spend much time in the States. This book actually chronicles his visits to several different monasteries throughout Europe, including France. And so if you're interested at all in monastic life and learning about French Catholic monasticism. This is really interesting, and Fermor is not particularly religious, but he writes beautifully about the religious experience within the monasteries. So this is a great one as well, and also in YRB. And to continue the monastic theme, so a lot of people don't know that Thomas Merton was actually French. He was born in France. He's a very famous monk, Trappist monk, that ended up in the United States. But this is just a beautiful memoir about his life, and the first segment of it takes place in France, and it's just beautiful writing about the French countryside and his experiences. And I would also highly recommend this if you're interested in reading about the monastics in any way. So Rilke is one of my favorite poets, and this collection is actually French poems that Rilke has translated, and as you can see, you get the English and the French, and he wrote these in French, and they are just absolutely stunning, very existentialist, exactly what you would hope from French poems, and I will highly recommend this collection. It's pretty dense, so it'll last you a while if you like to read a couple poems a day. And then this is a fictional novel that is one of my husband's favorites, So All the Light We Cannot See, and it won the Pulitzer. And Anthony Doerr wrote this, and it takes place during Paris, during the war. And yeah, just look it up and read about it. It's fiction. It's got love. It's got war. It's got all of that stuff. If you're into novels about war and human things, love, loss, this will be a great read for you. So those are all the recommendations I have today. Feel free to reach out to me and connect. I would love to hear more of your recommendations. If you're familiar with any French authors or books about France that I didn't mention, there are tons out there, so we barely scratched the surface. But now I'm going to go enjoy my chai